7 dead and nearly 50 injured in another terror attack, this time in central London. Panic on the streets after a speeding van ploughs into pedestrians on London Bridge. Drinkers dived for cover as 3 men brandishing knives attacked dozens of people.
Someone said there had been a white van, that there had been stabbings after the van had driven into people. Another person I remember vividly shouting, "It's Westminster all over again."
Within minutes, the attackers who'd been wearing fake suicide belts were shot dead. I'm live in central London with the latest on this fast-moving investigation. 12 people are arrested in East London at a flat linked to one of the attackers. The Prime Minister says it's time to get tough on terrorism.
Our country has made significant progress in disrupting plots and protecting the public. But it is time to say enough is enough.
From central London, this is ITV News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening from London Bridge, where last night terror was brought to Britain once again. 7 people were killed in the attack here, and tonight there are 21 others still in a critical condition. 3 terrorists drove into pedestrians on the bridge before jumping out of their van and attacking people with knives. Their fake suicide vests added to the panic, and their assault only ended when police shot them dead. Enough is enough, the Prime Minister said today, and 12 arrests have been made. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But first, James Mates has the story of the attack.
A little after 10 on a Saturday night in London, the streets crowded, pubs full with many who'd been watching the Champions League final. Ordinary people enjoying an ordinary night out, but the look on their faces as they fled told you they'd just seen something appalling. Once again, as in the Westminster attack, men in a vehicle had driven into pedestrians on a bridge across the Thames. This time a white rental van that crashed here near the steps of Southwark Cathedral. From it came 3 men armed with knives, stabbing and killing at random anyone they could hunt down.
They went, "This is for Allah," and they had a woman on the floor and they were stabbing her, all 3 of them constantly. I think there was a guy there, I remember, they stabbed him, and then I tried to pick up a stand to their bikes. It was like a chair or something to frighten them, to get them away from her. And then one of them chased me, and then they run back, they carried on stabbing her.
Too many people coming to blooding from everywhere, running, because they were running for that way, and after they come back running for that way. I think it was mostly 3 people there.
Someone said there had been a white van, that there had been stabbings after the van had driven into people. Another person I remember vividly shouting, "It's Westminster all over again."
There was just the briefest glimpse of the 3 men on the street looking for new victims. Within minutes, armed police had arrived in force, weapons at the ready, as they entered Borough Market, an upmarket area packed with bars and restaurants. As they hunted the attackers, as many people as possible were shepherded to safety. In a nearby restaurant, a customer filmed on his phone as police rushed in, telling diners to get to the floor and stay down. In another, the owner had sent his customers to the back before being confronted by the 3 men.
3 of these men were standing there with machetes and had some sort of belt on, and it just, I looked at them and genuinely it was very scary.
It took less than 8 minutes from the moment the attack started for this sound to be heard in one of the area's restaurants. That was just the start. Police now say 50 rounds were fired in taking down the 3 men.
The situation these officers were confronted with was critical. A matter of life and death. 3 armed men wearing what appeared to be suicide belts. They had already attacked and killed members of the public and had to be stopped immediately. Indeed, I'm not surprised that when faced with what they must have feared were 3 suicide bombers, the firearms officers fired an unprecedented number of rounds to be completely confident that they had neutralised the threat that those men posed.
They had killed all the attackers, but the police didn't know that immediately. Armed reinforcements were still being flown directly onto London Bridge by helicopter. Police launches patrolled the river below, where there may have been victims in the water. While on the streets, medical crews worked to remove the dead and injured. Below ground too, armed officers tried to move Londoners away from the London Bridge area, evacuating and then closing nearby tube stations.
Get on the train!
In fact, with all 3 terrorists lying dead on the street, the attack had been brought to an end astonishingly quickly. The political reverberations, though, will last a great deal longer.
We cannot and must not pretend that things can continue as they are. Since the emergence of the threat from Islamist-inspired terrorism, our country has made significant progress in disrupting plots and protecting the public. But it is time to say enough is enough. Everybody needs to go about their lives as they normally would. Our society should continue to function in accordance with our values. But when it comes to taking on extremism and terrorism, things need to change.
7 dead, 48 injured, 21 still critical. The 3rd time in just 3 months the UK's been hit. Brutal statistics. But even these don't begin to convey the devastating impact on so many lives. James Mates, ITV News.
It had been a fairly routine Saturday night here, but that all changed in just a matter of minutes. At just before 10 o'clock, the terrorists in the van began their journey across London Bridge. At 10:08, police received their first call with reports of the van mounting the pavement and swerving into pedestrians. It came to a halt on the south side of the bridge and 3 men jumped out. They ran down into Borough Market, stabbing people along the way. Among the bars and the restaurants targeted were the Southwark Tavern and the Black and Blue restaurant. 8 minutes after they were first called, a team of firearms officers fired 50 bullets outside the Wheatsheaf pub, shooting the 3 men dead. But the terrorists had managed to kill 7 people and injure at least 48. Well, this morning, 10 miles east of here, came the first evidence that police knew who the 3 attackers were. Armed officers raided a block of flats in Barking and made 12 arrests. It's the start of what's likely to be a long and extremely complex investigation. Our security editor, Rohit Kachru, has more.
10 miles from London Bridge, a block of flats is now the focus for investigators. This is Barking in East London, where officers arrived a few hours after last night's attack. 12 suspects were arrested here this morning. They were surrounded, forced to lie on the ground, and eventually taken away. Some people living here say they recognise one of last night's attackers. He was their neighbour.
He regularly invites us to barbecues which host out there on the grass, play football, table tennis regularly in our lobby area. Yesterday, I'm actually in the process of moving home at the moment, and I hired a van, moving some bits, and he came up to me and he was a little bit over nice, if you like, and it was quite strange. And he said he's quite getting inquisitive about the van. He was saying to me, "Oh, where can I get a van from?" Just asking real details, how much was it, and just like asking where he could get a van, basically.
And then, nearby in East Ham, more armed police. A cordon raised. A man arrested on a busy high street.
He was on the first floor window and then he jumped on the Paddy Power rooftop. And then he tried, I think he was trying to run, but because then he saw like there was an armed officer down here saying, "Put your hands up and get back inside."
The investigation is not yet a day old, but it's moving quickly. There is a lot to look at. Not one attacker, but 3. Rohit Kachru, ITV News.
Well, there are more than 30 people still being treated in hospital tonight. 21 of those are in a critical condition, and among the wounded were 4 police officers. Emma Murphy has been hearing the accounts of those caught up in the attack.
Once again on the pavement of a London bridge, the dreadful formation of people gathered around those for whom survival is no longer a certainty. Small groups struggling to preserve life, or at least preserve the dignity of those for whom life has ebbed away. With many fighting for their lives on one side of the bridge, on the other people run for theirs. It is flight for life and fear in its most raw state. As well as the 7 who died, 48 were injured. Many still face a battle for survival, and others must recover from life-changing harm. This is journalist Jeff Ho. He suffered serious neck injuries but was able to walk to safety. Elizabeth O'Neill's 23-year-old son Daniel was also stabbed.
He just stepped outside the bar for a second and a man ran up to him and said, "This is for my family, this is for Islam," and stuck a knife straight in him. He's got a 7-inch scar going from his belly round to his back.
Also injured 32-year-old Oliver Downing from New Zealand and Australian Candice Hedge. It's now been confirmed that French and Canadian visitors were among the dead and Germans among the injured. Across the world tonight, many countries mourn their own and stand united against the harm done by those who seek to reject all such countries stand for. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Well, the Prime Minister has said the general election will go ahead as planned, but most parties did briefly suspend their campaigning today. Our political correspondent Paul Brand is in Downing Street with us this evening. And Paul, all the parties agreed that Thursday's vote must go ahead.
Yeah, Mary, for the second time, terrorism has suspended this election campaign, but it will not suspend its conclusion. Polling day Thursday will not be postponed. None of the parties wanted that, though the majority have, as you say, suspended their national campaigning today. The Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Conservatives and the SNP. Not for long, though. Labour is already restarting its campaign this evening with a rally in Carlisle led by their leader, Jeremy Corbyn. We are expecting him to pay tribute to the victims and to criticise Theresa May for police cuts, as he argued today that democracy should not be disrupted any further.
I can't recall any other election when there's been anything like this. This has got to be the worst. I hope it will not disrupt our process, because we have to have a democratic process, but I also hope we'll reflect on the need to have sufficient police officers on our streets, but also sufficient intelligence.
Well, UKIP refused to suspend their campaign today, saying it would only encourage future attacks, while the Lib Dems have raised concerns around Theresa May creating a police state. Just 3 days left in this campaign to get these messages across, and I think we can expect many of them to focus on security.
OK, Paul Brand in Downing Street, thank you. Well, in Manchester tonight, security has been tightened still further for the concert being held for those killed and injured in last month's bombing. There is a heavy police presence outside the Old Trafford cricket ground. Those who were at the Ariana Grande concert on the night of the attack were offered free tickets. Well, let's get a final thought now from our security editor, Rohit Kachur. And Rohit, you can see everywhere, a huge police operation still continuing today.
And that operation begins with the process of identification, working out who these attackers were, and it does appear that the police have now done that. That's, of course, not where it ends. There are hundreds of witnesses to talk to, hundreds of hours of CCTV to look at. This is a process that is too familiar to police and security agencies in this country. You know, 3 attacks in 3 months. 1 attack is an incident, 2 attacks perhaps a coincidence, but 3 attacks, that points to a trend, to a pattern, and that is a worrying backdrop for investigators looking at this and for police authorities right across the country, Mary.
Theresa May says enough is enough. Briefly, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, we'll have to see, because she's been looking at this for 7 years, and so that's a question that she will now have to answer. All
right, Rohit, thank you very much indeed. And that is all for now. I'll be back with a specially extended ITV News at 10 o'clock this evening. Until then, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.